Let's have a talk, let's have a chat, talking about a little this and that. Hello and welcome to This and That. I am your host, Mary Easterling, and today we will be doing something a little different. I heard another song. I'm going to talk about it. It's a response to the Storm series and the Veil of Perception by Bob Newman. But before I start, to listen to any more of Bob Newman or anything else from This and That, go to talkingaboutthисandthat.wordpress.com and click on the podcast link. Scroll through it. There's a lot of stuff there. Bob Newman's writings will be found on our blog. One might wonder why on earth I would even listen to something like this, let alone post on it. But as I was doing my quote-unquote patient care of my mother, this popped up on her Pandora. I've heard it before, but this time it got my attention. It's from Blackmoor Night, entitled 25 Years. 25 years since I woke up trembling. 25 years since that terrible dream. I could see that the world was crumbling. Nothing is ever as it seems. Tried to run, but my feet were frozen. Tried to scream, but there was no sound. In my head, voices echoing, "Girl, you should know better by now. Long ago, far away. In the mist of yesterday, and you tried so hard to save me. How do you save someone from themselves? All those years, wasted wishes, drowning in the wishing well. 25 years since I woke up trembling. 25 years since that terrible dream. I could see that the world was crumbling. Nothing is ever as it seems." Like I said, this one got my attention, so we look at this. The singer talks about it being 25 years since she woke up trembling from the quote-unquote terrible dream, in which she could see the world crumbling. The blackness of night hides the destruction of the storm and its daughters, quote-unquote. This was mentioned in Newman's Storm series, episode 2, I believe. Speaking of daughters, it is written in the Proverbs that the leech has 2 daughters, quote-unquote, and they are twins, perhaps. They're called Give and Give. The leech puts his quote-unquote girls out to panhandle the pockets of the unsuspecting and have them quote-unquote give. Sound familiar? Now, it is one thing to quote-unquote sow into good soil, a good word, a good cause, or what have you. But it's another to be duped into being pickpocketed. So in the dark of the night, we have a quote-unquote crumbling world. Only mostly we can't see it until suddenly there is a quote-unquote light turned on. Hence, the nightmare. Then again, says the singer, nothing is ever as it seems. Lately, we ponder the new political quagmire of stuff being talked up in a bid of hype versus truth, or perceived truth, on the TikTok, the Facebook, the Internet, and the great YouTube, where pretty much, quote-unquote, anything does go, and think to ourselves that chaos has swept into our government. But it's not what it seems. While it appears chaotic to us, in reality it's calculated, planned, thought out, and a game not of chess, but of Go. Go is an Oriental game. To learn more about it, Google it. G-O, Go. The two games do not play the same, but they have the same goal. Kill the king and take his place. Governmental quote-unquote kings and the quote-unquote king of glory. As if, in the terrible dream, quote-unquote, the dreamer tries to make a move but can't because of frozen feet or, quote-unquote, sleep paralysis. The dreamer tries to make a sound but can't, and again, quote-unquote, sleep paralysis. Lately, there's been a prophetic swirl in certain camps about an, quote-unquote, awakening, the likes of which perhaps old Finney could not even have imagined. In a recent episode called quote unquote Anything Goes, I think that's the name, I mentioned lyrics from Hotel California, where the patron asks for quote unquote his wine and was told quote unquote that spirit hadn't been served since 1969. A Google search simply states that it was the end of an era called the 60s. That era was something important. In the year of my birth in 1962, prayer and Bible reading got banned and left the public school system. The moral governor called the cross, which was previously quote-unquote boss, was now quote-unquote tossed. And, well, Woodstock would show us that indeed from that point on, quote-unquote, anything goes. However, at the sad hotel, they did have pink champagne. In fact, it was 1969 that is spoken of as the most turbulent year ever, and it, quote-unquote, signaled major societal changes, from the man on the moon to Manson to Woodstock and beyond. But pink champagne did garner a solid hit on old Google. Turns out this is a drug. Pink cocaine, to be exact. It's not the upper, that is, let's call it, quote-unquote, white cocaine, from your basic Colombian cartel harvesting coca plants in the upper altitudes, where the plant is medicinal to help one breathe the thinner air. No, this stuff has, quote-unquote, other goodies in it. Stuff like ketamine or ecstasy, a banned dye, it's red, and more. Now, if the effects don't kill you, the coloring might, from cancer, maybe. In the song Hotel California, Pink Champagne explains the dark, stabby mess in the basement and all the dancing upstairs. But quote-unquote wine, we know. It's called the blood of the lamb. By 69, a full cycle of K1 through 12 kitty wonks went through an educational system without the Bible, which I said went bye-bye in 1962. And prayer in schools followed soon after. So now, in the one place that has your mind for 8 hours per day, the morality had slunk down to an all-time low, or so they thought. In the above lyric, the singer has a voice in her head saying, quote-unquote, girl, you should know better by now. This means wrong place, wrong time. She mentions that, quote-unquote, someone had tried, quote-unquote, so hard to, quote-unquote, save her from herself. But how does anyone ever save a person from themselves in the grip of the death of sin and trespass? Might that voice be the Holy Spirit? All the years of, quote, wasted wishes drowning in the wishing well, unquote. This is the original, quote, woke up, unquote, and, quote, saw the light, unquote. But it's been 25 years since that truth hit, since the revelation of the truth that sin is the thing that crumbles worlds. Here we are planning to go live on Mars. Then again, reality gets cloaked in the dark where nothing is actually as it seems. So, let me ask you, are we in the church drinking his wine or the counterfeit pink champagne? Do a blood test. It's called making sure you are, quote-unquote, in the faith. And that is it for this episode of This and That. Until next time.